All right, let's go to the next question. And I may change my mind later. We'll see. I was just working through it with you. Anonymous question. Hi, Pastor Mike. I've been fighting doubts and what ifs around the Trinity lately. And though I'm confident I'm confident in the answers I've gotten, I fear I'll never be certain about it again. Any advice? Oh, yeah. Um, Based on your question here, what you're describing seems to be more like psychological doubt, and I've totally been here. So let me describe to you what I've gone through, and then you can see if it applies to your situation. So many years ago, like 2005 or something like that, I went through like this total season of doubt and questioning everything about the Bible. I mean, except really, honestly, except for God's existence, because I think God's existence is so obvious that even when I very soberly asked, like, do I really believe God exists? Do I feel like there's real evidence? My answer was absolutely, because the evidence is so evident for God's very existence, which is something that I think irritates atheists to no end when I say this, that I think that God's existence is obvious and the best argument for him is common sense. I also think there's a ton of philosophical, deep, careful arguments, but I believe that common sense is the best path to understand God's existence. And if you don't perceive that there's a God easily, there may be something wrong in the perception realm, not in the realm of evidence you're looking at. I don't mean that as an insult. I just think it's true. Okay, but how do I know my Bible hasn't been changed? How do I know Jesus has risen from the dead? How do I know that when it says there were 500 witnesses, there were 500 witnesses? How do I know this? And how do I know that my perceptions of my spiritual experiences aren't just some psychological effect that I've had? How do I know that the traditions I've received in my church are genuine and solid and not just something that sort of accrued over time? I had a million issues. And what happened is I went through this season of real difficulty as I pushed through and I looked for solid evidence. And I slowly knocked these things down one at a time. How do I know the Bible hasn't been changed? And I looked into textual criticism and I examined those things and studied and learned. And then I went, oh, there's a ton of really good evidence the Bible hasn't been changed, at least not in the sense that people often claim. And then I looked into evidence for, say, the resurrection of Christ, and I was shocked that there was actually so much historical evidence for an event that happened 2,000 years ago. I mean, for most things that happened back then, we have zero evidence. It's amazing that we have so much evidence for the resurrection. And I was not making videos at the time. This was all literally just for me personally, digging deep on those issues, amazed by the evidence. How do I know that my understanding of these passages of Scripture are solid, that my basic concepts, my core doctrines of Christianity are true? I examine those things and I go, yes, look, it's all there. Evidence is there. The Scripture's there. But here's the thing. After all that, I remember thinking in my head, do I have any significant, like real serious, lingering question that genuinely challenges my Christian faith? And my answer was no. I didn't have any left that I have questions, sure, but that genuinely challenged my Christian faith. My answer was no, but I still felt like it did, right? So intellectually, I was there, but psychologically or emotionally or whatever, I was not. And that was the weirdest thing, because I thought if I just chased down all these intellectual issues that I would have solved my problems of doubt, but I didn't, because I'm more than an intellectual machine. There's also a will. There's also how I respond to just general fears. And sometimes doubt can almost, and forgive me for those of you who have serious PTSD, I'm not at all comparing this to that. Okay, this is not, I'm just using it as a way of drawing out a point. Okay, so forgive me, this analogy is not meant to be pushed too far. But I think that those who have PTSD, what happens is they're no longer, let's say from war, they're no longer in a war zone, but something happens, like say fireworks on the 4th of July, and intellectually they know that this is not war. Like I know it's not. Like there's no doubt in my mind that this is not happening. But I'm still in total turmoil as if it were, because I am more than just an intellect machine, right? There's the memory of the fear and the doubt and the insecurity and the questioning. There's the memory of these difficult things I've gone through. And so when I have even a smidgen of uncertainty, it can lead to this psychological fear and doubt that you're like, I'm intellectually secure here. I have a couple unanswered questions. Maybe I have 100, but they're not central. So to this I say, you won't find an intellectual solution to a psychological problem when you feel like your intellect is already there. I want to recommend my video on the Trinity. Hey, I could, for your questions about the Trinity, I want to recommend my video on the Trinity. I walk through some very tough stuff. I give answers to tons of objections I've gotten from non-Trinitarians on the issue. And mods, you can put that in there for anybody who's interested. My video on the doctrine of the Trinity. It's just called like, Are We Right About the Trinity, or something like that. But I don't know if that's going to help. I think that what you have to do is you have to start learning how to doubt those doubts at this point. Because when you have fear and doubt that's based upon little evidence, that's when you have to learn to doubt those things. And you say, this is just me being weird. This is me jumping at shadows. This is me being fearful of a noise that isn't even like that other noise that used to scare me. This is a psychological issue. So my recommendation would be, my advice to you, you asked for advice, would be twofold. Every time you're confronted with that emotional like uncertainty and that fear that rises up, you do a quick intellectual check and you say, hey, do I have legitimate intellectual reasons, or do I have general fears based on uncertainty? And if the answer is general fears based on uncertainty, you deal with it in the faith realm and you say, Lord, I trust you. I trust what the scripture seems to be saying. I'm going to rely upon you. And that's that. Nothing else to be done. If they're genuine intellectual fears, you work through those and you answer those questions through research and studying. The other thing I recommend is this. Certainty is annoying and unnecessary. This is so important, I think, for us to understand. In life, you generally have certainty about almost nothing. And this almost never bothers you. But you don't realize that you're holding up a standard of total and complete certainty on other things arbitrarily. Like on the Trinity, I have to have total and complete certainty. Why? Like if you're like, I'm like 90% sure, I don't know how you even make up these percentages. Like, do humans really work this way? But let's say that you claim you're 90% sure the Trinity's true, and that 10% nagging doubt. I'm like, dude, you obviously go with the 90%. Like when you're pulling out in your, to drive somewhere, you're not 100% certain nothing could possibly bad happen, right? I could break, my tire could pop, my car could stall, and that truck could hit and kill me, but I still pull out. Because we never live our lives based on the idea, if I have any inkling, lingering doubt of any kind, I won't commit. That's just unwise. It creates tons of insecurity, and I encourage you to not worry about total certainty. Worry about warranted faith, warranted belief. Like, I have good reason to believe this, and that's all I need. Move forward.